Hello everyone and welcome back. So this is part 2 in a 2-part video series with Eugene, who is the creator of the VICO Dynamics plugin for Unreal Engine 4 and Unreal Engine 5, which is a rope, cloth, and soft body plugin. In part 2, we're going to talk about a lot of cool stuff, but we're going to start off talking about how it's very user-friendly and artist-friendly, so you don't have to have an engineering degree in order to actually use it. There's some really cool systems inside of Unreal. You know, you talked about I think the cable system, right? You talked about how that was built in, and then now they do have, Niagara in there that can do really cool stuff. And you talked about NVIDIA's Flex branch. Those are really, really cool. Like you said, some of those have compatibility issues, and then there's other, concerns and things like that. But one of the big things that I've seen people commenting on your product they love about it is how artist and user friendly it is. Some Niagara can be a career path. You could spend your career just getting really good at those things. Whereas it seems like with your system, it's like, hey, I want you to be able to do the things you want to do, but not necessarily spend the rest of your career trying to figure out all these things. And I imagine that's not an easy thing to do. I've talked to some people that have written software for visual effects purposes, and they're like, yeah, it's really easy if you're writing something just for yourself. But when you're trying to make it usable for a lot of other people, that's really difficult. And I was just curious if that is a common thing that you've had mentioned, like the comments that I saw, or if you put a lot of thought into making them easy for everybody to use.
It was very much the result of having worked so many years with my business partner Dave,
Mm.
who is
Mm-hmm.
he's not a coder. He can write code, but he's not a coder.
Mm-hmm.
He's very much like he does websites
Mm-hmm.
for a living.
Mm-hmm.
So working with him many years, I've already had to put together so many tools to make things efficient, accessible. You know, something that he can just come in, do the work he needs to do, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I very much designed the plugin with that mindset. And it's not perfect. There's so many things that I still want to improve that I've gotten feedback on, and it's just a matter of just having the time to do it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it is designed with the thought of a non-programmer and designer being able to quickly go in and put together, a soft body that behaves in the way
Mm-hmm.
they intend.
So all gifts should be addressed to Dave, right? Dave is his name, right? So all gifts for
Yeah,
UI design should be addressed to Dave. Like, thank you,
that's
Dave,
right.
because I
Yep.
mean that is a big thing. I mean, the tools that have been built into Unreal are amazing, but
Hmm.
like you open them up and you look at them and you just kind of close them down again. Sometimes you're like, well, one day I'll learn these, and that's not a
Yeah.
knock on them. They're extremely powerful, but your tools, like from everything I've read and that I've looked at, it's like, hey, you can do a lot of really cool things without having to take a, class at your local college, to figure out, which is really, really cool. So that's
Yep.
awesome. That's fun to hear that you've been able to develop it alongside your business partner, who you're basically able to just kind of design for and run stuff by and make sure it
Yep.
actually works for someone else. That's cool. That's really, really
Exactly.
cool. We talked about Flex and NVIDIA, briefly, but NVIDIA's been releasing branches for Unreal Engine for a long time, and a lot of them have been kind of discontinued. But their cloth system was something that I was really interested in for a long time, and their hair system and all things like that. They had some really neat stuff, but that's a big team. That's NVIDIA, big green or whatever you want to call it. And then here you are, and you're like, I think VICO Dynamics needs cloth and, those things too. So maybe you can tell me when specifically it was incorporated into the system, but you added in where you can create and simulate cloth, but you can also convert any existing static mesh
Hmm.
into cloth as well, right? And this will work with all kinds of other types of interactions as well in collision, right?
Yeah, and this was the beautiful byproduct of designing the plugin from the very beginning to be a generic soft body physics simulation, where the core of the simulation is point particles
Mm-hmm.
with mass
Mm-hmm.
uh, attached together with constraints or distance constraints. That's essentially all it is as far as simulation, right? And then from that, you want to build a rope? Sure, just chain them together. There's a rope for you. You want to build a cloth? Make a 2D sheet
Mm-hmm.
with constraints between each of those particles in a specific way. Look, you got yourself a piece of cloth, right? And then once you have that, you want to conform it to a certain shape. Fine, put a little more constraints to hold the
Hmm.
shape, to whatever degree you want, and you got yourself a mesh cloth. So that was, from the beginning, I wanted that flexibility and that extensibility. So I was hoping actually for people to go in and start making their own components of extending the system further. I
Hmm.
haven't seen anyone do that yet,
Hmm.
but I'd love to see that happen. Maybe
And
someday.
is it an open enough system where people could do that if they wanted
Oh
to
yeah,
within your
yes,
system? Oh, cool.
yes, and I even integrated into blueprints.
Oh,
So
oh, I
if
didn't know
if
that.
you yeah if you want to build your own soft bodies using just blueprints, you can
Oh,
do that.
wow. It's converting a static mesh into, cloth or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
just, wow, it just happens, almost magically. And that's stuff, again, that I'd maybe seen at one point on Unreal with NVIDIA, but it's not available anymore. And that was a whole team of people under one of the biggest, graphics card makers in the world, doing it. And here we're
Mhm.
able to do it, as a single software developer, which
Yeah,
is pretty amazing.
and it's not perfect though. There are caveats, and I'll address them real quick. Just
Yeah.
I
No,
do
it'd be
get
great to.
questions about this.
Uh-huh.
So right now the system is a one-to-one conversion, as in however many vertices your mesh has, that's how many particles you'll get. And the more particles you have, the more constraints you need to hold them together, the more performance this takes to
Of
simulate.
course. Yeah.
So if you take your, downloaded mesh from wherever that has a million vertices, it's not going to go very well.
So
So
you need to have a decimated or reduced polygon
yes,
mesh before
yes,
you try and run it on there.
yeah.
Okay, so it's
Ideally, to a degree, like
yeah.
you can go up to a pretty decent amount. And with modern machines, I've seen meshes go up to about 20, 30,000
Which is
vertices,
that's a lot.
which is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you don't want to take something straight out of ZBrush and eight
No.
5 million.
Do it. I want to see what happens.
Yeah, it's a pretty accurate simulation then if it's doing one for every single vertex then.
It's game accurate. I'll say that right away because
Hmm.
I do get these questions as well. As it's built upon a single precision float.
Mm,
It's
mm,
not a
mm,
double precision, so
mm, mm.
it isn't deterministic. But I'd love to make it deterministic.
That's more of a hardware constraint though, yeah.
Uh, Initially, it was.
Hmm.
Nowadays, not so much.
Oh,
Nowadays, doubles are as performant or close to as performant as single precision.
oh, well,
So,
how old
well,
am I then? Oh, I thought that. Oh, I'm real old then.
I
Okay.
mean, your memory obviously doubles,
Oh,
but again,
yeah.
how much RAM do modern machines have?
No, that's true.
Modern
That's
consoles
true.
have 8 gigs.
Yeah, that's
That's,
true.
so yeah, it's not as big of a deal as it was when it started.
So we talked just briefly earlier about Niagara, and Niagara hasn't been an
Mhm.
Unreal Engine forever. I feel like it's almost like a recent addition in the grand scheme of things, but it's
Mhm.
been in there for a while. Did that change how your plugin worked as far as integration with everything, or did that not really affect your system at all?
Not at all. They're separate systems completely. If anything, it made integration with soft bodies, like attaching particle effects to soft body objects, even easier,
Oh,
which
well, that
is
was nice.
super cool. Yeah.
That's nice. Because yeah, sometimes you see when additions get added, people have to completely rework some things. Then like, oh, I wonder
I'll
if that was an issue.
I'll tell you what was an issue, and it required
All
a
right.
boatload of rework. The new chaos physics system.
Oh, okay. That's yes.
Yeah. So previously, VICODynamics was tight. Well, I'll admit it. This was my own sort of misstep in designing and implementing the plugin.
Mm-hmm.
I tightly integrated physics
Mm-hmm.
into the plugin. That was a
Mm-hmm.
mistake. I should have done it through a loose um, integration,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to rework quite a few things internally
Mm-hmm.
to create a loose integration. So
Mm-hmm.
now, as of 4.27 release,
Uh-huh.
the plugin now supports physics and chaos at the same time, and you can switch between the two, as well as UE5.
So was it more of an issue of making it work loosely and not rely on physics, or was it hard to integrate with chaos?
It's just abstracting away the physics types. That's
Mm.
it, basically. Previously, it directly used the physics rigid body type,
Okay.
and it asked the information directly, right? Whereas now there's a nice and clean interface of, I believe it's called VD rigid body proxy, and it just each of the chaos and physics
Mhm.
implement their own version of that, and then the plugin doesn't care what's behind it.
And by the way, everybody, if you think I'm understanding all of this, as like you are, I'm following, but I wouldn't say I'm understanding all this. But this is
And I'm
great to know.
trying to simply describe
Yeah,
this
I know,
plugin.
which is funny. Which I know he's trying
Yeah.
to make it as simple as
I don't think I'm
possible.
doing a great job though.
No, no, you are because, I mean, physics is a long-standing way of handling physics in games. It's yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it originated from NVIDIA, but it's been used everywhere, right? I mean, it's just a very
Yeah.
long-standing thing. So it makes sense to design and have your plugin
That
implement
was
with it
one of the
because
reasons. Yeah, back then
yeah,
I didn't even think that we would have a different physics engine
yeah,
because
exactly. Why would it
yeah,
go away? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So it makes sense. Yeah. So I don't think that was a misstep on your part. It's just like I guess things change eventually. So I'm not going to try and explain this because I think you're going to be able to explain it better. But volume preservation is a pretty cool feature that you've added in, and I've seen it done in videos.
hmm
But I'm gonna do. I can try and mimic what it does, but you explain it is gonna probably be a lot better. Maybe you can give me some usage scenarios of what that would simulate. Maybe.
Basically, it makes stuff bouncy and squishy. That's essentially what it is.
There you go.
I mean, if you want to make a balloon or a water balloon,
There we
that's
go. Yeah,
volume
that's yeah.
preservation. That's what you
Mhm.
use. It basically calculates the, the volume which the soft body tries to preserve as if it was filled with a liquid or a gas.
Mhm.
So as
Mhm.
you squeeze it, you drop it, etc., it'll try its best to
Mhm.
preserve that volume by, stretching out, etc., stuff like that.
And I got to be honest. I don't know if I've seen that in. I mean, does I haven't seen that implemented in any other places or any other software packages. Is that something that you just kind of decided, like, hey, this would be cool to have?
Flex had it. Like that was the biggest thing that Flex had was this volume
Mm.
preservation stuff. I believe Chaos. I don't know if Chaos has it though.
Was that a tricky one to figure out how to integrate? Was that a fun challenge for you, or?
I just wanted to see it work. Like it's such a cool thing because okay, any feature that I put into VICO Dynamics,
uh,
after it's put in or like the initial implementation, I spend hours staring
just
at a
plain.
screen just playing with it.
And it is. I'm sure it is pretty magical. You're like, wow, you do the coding, and then things just like magically happen, and in a way you would expect in the real world for them to happen. Like that stuff especially, I expect to see in games some type of physics. I've started to expect a little bit of cloth. You still don't see a lot of cloth in games. You see like little fragments here and there. You don't see
hmm
really really hardcore stuff, but volume preservation type stuff, you don't really see that very often. So that was when I saw the first test of that, or
hmm
videos when you posted that, just like, oh my, look at that. That's really, really cool. So
Yeah.
that's really, really fun.
Well, let me first ask you, did you see that video where it's inflating and deflating a balloon?
Yes. That
How
was
cool
that
is that?
that's the one I keep that's the one I keep thinking of as you keep talking about this. Because when I was doing this earlier,
It's so
that's what I was
cool.
talking about. Yeah, I just kept looking. I was like, oh, it's magic. It's witchcraft. Like, how did he do that?
I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just love seeing how the volume propagates. Like when it was no, when it was mostly deflated, you could see how the volume propagates across the balloon.
Hmm.
Like I don't know, I can't explain it. We'll we'll put up a video to show what I mean.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that was the coolest thing ever. And this is sort of the starting phases of what I want to do next. The next big addition. Well,
Hmm.
no, I won't say that because there's a lot of stuff I want to do beforehand that are big but not huge.
Hmm.
But this would be the next major addition to the plugin, and that would
Hmm.
be simulating fluids. So this is including liquid as well as gas, and I think that would be really cool. And then putting it together, right? Having a water
Man.
balloon with actual water, which Flex did do that, yes, and
Mhm.
I want to do that too.
And I want to do that. I like you looked right at the camera, and I want to do that
Yeah,
too.
that's right.
But it's just so cool that all those things work together in one system, one place. You know,
Yep.
that's such a cool thing. If I haven't already put up the example on screen at this point, like just seeing, you know, the occlusion where, you know, you have air forces
Oh yeah, that
affecting
was another
things.
thing I thought was
Because
super awesome.
but that's a whole other world that opens up too, is like the interactivity. I mean, this is just the happy side effect of using your system is
Hmm.
usually that's either hand animated or you have to very carefully implement that stuff. But once
Yep.
your system's in place, it's like the kind of secondary animation you get when you would do, you know, some type of hair simulation. It's kind of similar to that, but this is like wind affecting everything around it as well. It's just really, really cool
And by the
stuff.
way, the wind simulation is accurate, so it takes into effect surface area as well.
Oh,
So,
really?
for example, a piece of cloth swaying in the wind, when it's perpendicular to the wind,
Uh-huh.
it'll get affected more, obviously, right? Because
Yeah,
more
yeah.
surface area.
Uh-huh.
Whereas if it's in line with the wind parallel to it, it won't, and it'll behave like it does in
Wow.
real life. Like it'll start dropping, and then as it picks up surface area, it'll get kicked up again.
Wow. And this is all
Yeah.
because it's particles and constraints you were saying?
Yep.
That's right?
Yep.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Even my simple mind is just nerding out on all this. This is so cool. That's so awesome. We talked about it just a little bit earlier, but the action arcade wrestling game that you've developed over time and has been going to different platforms is kind of where we got this whole system. Not where it's moved into from there, but it started off as a rope system. And I'm just curious to after having played it, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the game and, you know, kind of the more recent releases and what all system and platforms it's on now. Because I played it on PC on Windows 10, but I'm curious to hear where else it's at.
So Dave, my partner on that project, he has this down to a T of talking about the game. So I'll do my best.
Okay.
So Action Arcade Wrestling is very much a throwback to the arcade days of wrestling, when all you had were two buttons and a directional pad, right? Or directional control.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what we stuck with. You get two buttons, you get your grapple, your strike, and you get your D-pad to, walk in the ring. And so the whole premise behind it was just to make a fun game. We're
Mhm.
not making a simulation. We're not trying to be WWE. That's a whole nother topic. But yeah, it's just making a fun wrestling game. That's what we were down at. And another big emphasis of Action Arcade Wrestling is to give you the freedom to create whatever you want as
Mhm.
far as wrestlers, as far as arenas. If you want to do a vending machine fighting a number two pencil, go for it. You can do that.
You
Like,
can't?
yes.
I
Yeah,
didn't know
people
that.
have put that together. You can go in the game right now, search for the creations. I believe it's called Pepsi vending machine. If you search for it, you can download it, and the number two pencil,
Oh,
and
that's
have a
hilarious.
match. It's just the coolest thing ever. The biggest thing for the creation suite was for you to be able to create whatever you want first and foremost,
Mhm.
and then for this to be available on all platforms,
Mhm.
not just PC.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you could create your character, wrestler, upload it to the server of the cloud, and then it's accessible on every platform. And that's Xbox One, PlayStation 4 and 5, and now the Nintendo Switch.
Cool. So you really are on basically everything then, is
Yep.
what you're saying. Okay. Cool.
Except for
That's awesome.
mobile. We're not on mobile.
You still have plenty of options, people. So all right, everyone. So I hope you found this interview as fun as it was for me to talk with Eugene. This was a long time in the works, probably over a year. When we started this, Unreal Engine 5 wasn't even released yet, but we wanted to have all kinds of cool overlays, really edit it down. We talked for a long time, but hopefully you guys really enjoyed all the information here. Definitely check it out on the marketplace because now you have a much better idea of all the things it can do. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you on the next As Art.